Good evening, those of you who are watching us by way of YouTube, and those of you who have gathered here tonight. This is the Know Your Neighbor program, and I'm Dr. Stephen York, and with me is my friend Jane Donnell. And Jane is the theater director at the Alamo, and this is an opportunity to talk about the Alamo and getting to know Jane a little bit better. As we live in a small town, sometimes we recognize people by face or name, but we don't really know their story. And so the idea of the Know Your Neighbor program is to give us an opportunity in a friendly, community-centered way to get to know people that are very much doing a good work in the community. So Jane, I want to welcome you.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. And so let's begin and tell us a little bit about how did you land at the Alamo and how long have you been there? And tell us a little bit about your own life here in Bucksport.
I finished school at the University of Maine, and I was hired at the mill to work on a special recycling project, and I worked there for a few years. I'd worked there my summers through college, and there were some interesting things going on at Northeast Historic Film. The Alamo wasn't open, but they were doing movies sort of in the basement as they were trying to renovate everything. And I started to go, and it was really interesting. And their work was really interesting to me, and I sort of visited a few times, and I went back to, working in the mill, and I got a cold call, saying that they'd remembered me, and they had a position, the first full-time paid position at Northeast Historic Film, and they thought I'd be perfect for it because I was a local. And they were all from away and sort of needed a liaison to the town. And so that doesn't happen. You don't just get a call and here's one of the coolest jobs, you could have. And I'm a history nerd, self-proclaimed history nerd, and my husband and I weighed, me getting mill money versus let's work for a nonprofit. But it was such a great opportunity that I took it, and I helped with the theater as it was getting going, but we had a different theater manager when we opened. I did other things, and as things often happen with nonprofits, you do whatever work needs to be done, and that's how I've acquired most of the responsibilities that I have. And I've always been promised when someone leaves, oh, could you just fill in until we get someone else? And then they realize that all folds into my day, and now I wear a lot of hats.
Right.
And it's hard for me to separate the theater from the archives because they're not really separate. We just happen to have a movie theater, which is a community reason. We weren't gonna, Northeast Historic Film was gonna open an archive in Wilson Hall or the Alamo Theater. There were two brick buildings in Bucksport that were on the market, and we didn't have any plans to have a theater. It was, we were gonna have a little screening room, just to, for academics that came or whatever. But we kept getting notes under the door. When are you gonna open my movie theater back up? The place had been closed since 1956, but gosh darn it, you're gonna open my movie theater. So that was pretty eye-opening that the community wanted the movie theater back.
So you said you were local, which was a plus for them and you, I guess,
Sure.
for the job. So you went through the Bucksport school system?
I'm as Bucksport. Since, yeah, I was gonna say, there's some pretty special neighbors in this room. Yes, I have. I think, I was looking at that big banner on the wall, and there's a picture of the choir, and there's like someone that could be my mother in that picture.
Right.
And my parents were married in this church, and I did high school youth group here, and yeah, I'm from right here.
So then after high school graduation, did you go to the paper mill or you went to college
I went to
first?
the University of Maine. I studied sociology and women's studies,
Yeah?
a lot of psychology. Had no idea what I wanted to do. I just figured if you could figure out people, you could probably do just about anything, and it's helped a lot with marketing, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you went there, graduated,
Yeah.
and you were working at the mill
Yep.
on summertime?
No, I went to the mill full time after I got out of school.
Really?
Yep. Paid off my student loans and just,
Wow,
yep,
that's great.
yep. I was the only woman in an all-man department. I drove a forklift, and yeah.
Well, I guess that women's study did something good for you.
Well, I don't know. It was
Okay.
hard, and it was, it's special because unless you've been in there, it's hard to understand the whole culture of a mill town. And I feel very fortunate that I understood, what my town is all about.
Did your family work at the mill too?
My dad went in the mill. He came home from Vietnam, and they decided they really wanted to have another baby, and that would be me. And as soon as they found out it was a girl, when I was born, Dad said, I've got to get a better job. So into the mill he went, and then my brothers and I all worked there for as college students.
Right.
And and then I married a millman,
And you married what?
a millman.
A millman
Yep.
also. You're just right. 100%, right?
Yep.
So what was it like for you growing up in Bucksport? I mean, you were here your whole life. I mean, is there a memory that sticks out? I hear you talk about the mill
Yep.
and that important culture, right?
Well, and there was a lot of mill activities. It felt like everything was sponsored by the mill. We had a lot of celebrations, and so the town came together often
Yeah.
as a whole.
Can you give me an example of what that coming together was like?
Well, the mill put on rodeos, and the mill put on parade. There were always parades. Every holiday had a thing. When it was 3 days. Yeah. Yep. I just read something about that because we've collected a lot of film from various things too, so it's fun. And during the quarantine, during the pandemic, I did a lot of research on Emery Hall, which is what the building was that the Alamo replaced. And I was fascinated by that. Was such a cultural heart of this community. And when it burned in August of 1915, it just devastated the town because that's where every meeting was held, every celebration was held, any inside stuff was held at at Emery Hall.
And that was on the location where the Alamo is now.
Yep.
So then who built the Alamo after the fire?
Well, H.O. Hussey, I think, had designs on doing a movie theater, putting more into a movie theater. He also wanted to house the Masons, because the Masonic Hall was they needed someplace.
Yeah.
So he built like a place for them in the Alamo as well. It's the fastest build. It's unbelievable that giant hall burned in August, and the Alamo opened in February 18th. How they did that, they're working in the winter, and we haven't had a real structural defect till this right now. We just had repaired. We had to get a grant because part of the fly is where all the backdrops are on pulleys and stuff. All the pulleys and stuff are still there. It's a pretty neat space where the stage performances, they drop the backdrops and stuff, but the wall and the roofer had separated, so we just had that repaired. But that's a pretty good run for, let's go over 100 years before we need to. Mendel. What? They don't, and we have footage of the mill being built, and those masons were incredible. Just how they did everything so fast. And
So Emery Hall was a cultural center, right? And I'm hearing you talk about scenery or whatever you call it, dropping down. Is that still possible today with the renovations that have happened there? I mean, could you still have a play there, or? We've
done a lot of plays there. You're not going to have that, that's all boxed up.
Right.
But we have a green room, and we have a stage, and we've done the river. We had a local theatrical club in there. It was their home base. And that was one of my favorite things, because talk about community. That was, the vet and, all the local people put on these plays.
Right.
And that wasn't that long ago.
How long ago would it have been, do you think?
Probably 10 years ago,
really?
Maybe.
So, of course, COVID has done a lot, right? But in reclaiming the space, you've done a lot of work during that time, right?
We have.
And could you tell us a little bit about what was done during this space of time, and
Sure.
what the renovations and
Yep.
Yeah, can you talk
Besides the structural thing that no one will ever see, and we still have some to do. We have some. If you're driving down Main Street and you look up and you see there's a little door, and some people used to call all the time and say, that door is open. Which is funny, because we had it open sometimes. But we have to replace some glass up there. And the original tin from 1915 is still across that whole facing of the upper part. I think that's incredible too. I hope somebody does something with that, because I think that would be a great thing to have and be repurposed, because it's so old. So inside we put in, we got rid of all the carpet. The carpet was so faded and so stained from spills and stuff. So all the floors are new in the lobby. And the most impressive thing we did was put in a hearing loop, which is, I'm so proud of that, because we have, the largest growth area we had was on Sundays, where we were doing open captions for people with hearing. And some people just had trouble. We show a lot of English, British comedies and stuff, and it's hard to follow. So some people like to read the titles. So we had a donor who helped us with the hearing loop, and he really pushed us and he educated us, because he's a summer person who comes from someplace where all the theaters have the hearing loop. And if you don't know what a hearing loop is, all the modern hearing aids have a little coil inside. So rather than have headsets, we offer the infrared headsets as well. But when you put those on, it amplifies all sound, whereas the hearing loop caters to your particular issues. So if you have trouble with background noise, or you can't hear low tones, it adjusts those things to you specifically. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was a great gift.
It was a great gift, and we're very grateful. And I have had the best notes. And I got these too when we did the open captions. People saying, I love to go to the movies, but I didn't want to go anymore because my husband couldn't go, because he couldn't hear and he couldn't. So it's pretty crazy that, we've something that simple, you can change people's lives.
That's great.
Yeah.
So thinking about community, which I know that you told me is really important. Looking ahead, what do you see as some of the possibilities? I mean, it has a rich history, and there's this whole piece around the Northeast Historic Collection,
Yep.
right? But as to the physical use of the Alamo, how do you see, what kind of possibilities? Is any imagination going off in your head about what could be done there?
Well, COVID is definitely an issue at the moment. And we'd had some really fun, we were kicking some things around with Verona Wine and Design. They don't have a lot of space, and we talked about they'd like to do a murder mystery, which we just did as a rental. We had a 90th birthday party. It was amazing. Because we're still doing rentals because we need the income and it's more controlled. This group's inviting certain people and they're taking the responsibility for risk. But we did a murder mystery that the Penobscot Theater has been closed for the 2 years, and one of them is a relative, and some of the other actors were dying to do something, so she got a bunch of them to come do this birthday party, and the place was transformed into a train station. The lobby became a train station, and everybody got a ticket, and when they went in the theater, it became a train with the clickety-clack and the sound, and people would disappear during the dinner, because we did a sit-down dinner for almost 60 people.
How many?
It was about 60 people.
Really?
So, yeah, we get pretty creative. We had done that before. MIT has a chapter of displaced MIT grads who summer in Maine or something like that, and they rented the theater once and did a sit-down dinner for 50.
And
So we knew we could.
Where do you do this, out front?
No, we do it in the theater. We did round tables on the stage and then rectangular on the sides.
Really?
Yep. We have a wedding coming up on New Year's Eve.
Really?
Yep, this is our 3rd wedding. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, I think a lot of us are wondering, do you see the movie theater business starting up again at any point in the next decade?
Yeah, we did a little, I'll tell you what happened to us. We watched the numbers, the COVID numbers, and things were really dropping. When we made the decision to reopen in the beginning of July, we had, and it took a bit to gear up. We had given away everything and sold everything because we couldn't keep candy and all that stuff, on hand. So we, and our staff wandered off because there was no work. So to amp up again and get ready to open, by that time the variant showed up. So we hit it just right.
Right.
So the first weekend we had 100 people, and
Right.
then 40, 30, and we're too small to have social distancing. That's the biggest thing. You can't take a row out, and we play the finances very tight because we're a nonprofit, so we can't justify $8 M&Ms or charging outrageous prices. So our goal is to break even, just to pay our people and pay for all those things, and it isn't a money-making venture, it's a community
Right.
venture.
But there are opportunities to sponsor movies,
Yes.
right? So that must help some.
It does.
Right? It probably doesn't do it all, but I mean, some.
No, the way movies work is we have to pay, we're contracted with the different Hollywood studios, and which dictates how much we charge and all that stuff, and then they take a percentage of all the ticket sales, and if there's always a minimum. So if nobody shows up, they're still getting $250 or
Right.
whatever. So that's the kicker. So that's what that $100 that people sponsor a movie, that always helps with the minimum,
Right.
which is, it doesn't pay the minimum because the minimum is at least $250 every time. But it's
Per show,
per weekend.
per weekend.
Yeah. So more than helping pay that, you all are invested, and that's a huge thing for us.
Right.
Because we're your community cinema,
Right.
and we want to be that. We want people to feel that.
Now, Downton Abbey 2 is coming out. I want to sponsor that. All right, I'm putting my dibs in tonight.
Well,
But
another thing I threw this out the other day, is, maybe we try something we know everybody wants to see. Maybe we try, we're not open every single weekend. Because our biggest thing is we're not going to break even.
right.
We have to have, this is rough because there's a lot of factors, but 180 people on a whole weekend generally will help us break even. But the other thing people need to know is, because of the pandemic, the movie business has completely changed, and we don't know what it's going to look like. I have friends that have movie theaters that are open right now, and it's not good. They're losing money. And for a while, the studios were being a little bit kinder, but now everything is being released to streaming at the same moment. We were all excited about Clifford the Big Red Dog because our friends were going to finally make money in their theaters, and they're simultaneously releasing it so you can watch it at home.
But
That
I think
hurts.
the difference, right, is that people really do want to come together,
Yes.
right? I mean, you can watch stuff
Right.
at home, and that's okay, but it's not like seeing people you know. And
Right.
my last
And popcorn.
my last memory of Ralph Jewett before he passed was that he and Jeanette and some people were coming out of the theater, and I mean, he was just remarkable. I liked Ralph a lot. And,
Me too.
So
My mom babysat for his children.
really?
Yeah.
So
That's how I got to know the Jewetts. Besides, my grandparents lived on Bridge Street, 3 houses up from
right.
the Jewetts.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying. You run into people that you don't see in your own
Right.
living room, right? And I do think that there's an interest in people getting together. And I think it's, I don't know what the answer is for that, for you guys, but, maybe,
I'm not giving up hope.
no, I hope not.
I'm not giving up hope that we will be back.
Yeah,
We received a shuttered venue grant that helped us reopen before,
right.
and we have monies left from that to try it again, which we will. I'm anticipating, we've talked about the beginning of the new year, and that's pretty soon.
Right.
So I'm hopeful. But,
Well, that's good to know.
but don't think the pandemic, what's really interesting about being at Northeast Historic Film is everyone was home streaming their stuff, and we were getting all the calls for stock footage. So it helped it's gotten us through because people are home watching. So we're in a weird reality at Northeast Historic Film because Netflix needs content. So we have
Ton of it.
their stuff. You know, if you're watching Muhammad Ali, if anybody's watched that on PBS, where do you think they got the Sonny Liston footage? Right here in Bucksport.
Right.
So, it's an exciting time because we're getting a lot of stock footage inquiries.
So you mentioned Verona Wine Design and maybe some kind of creative
Yeah.
partnership. And are they thinking about a murder mystery dinner too, or is that what you were going
That's where when I went off on that tangent about that was, we talked about something like that where they could provide the food and we could provide a bigger space, especially when it's cold.
Right. I think one of the most interesting people who is behind the counter is Phil. You know, I don't
Yeah.
know much. I don't know anything about him really, other than he's a really nice, friendly face. And I know he couldn't come tonight, but is Phil a longtime employee?
He is. I think he's just a little bit been there a little bit longer than me. I started in 1995.
Wow.
Yep, growing up there. And he was there probably a year or two before me. And Phil's a Mainer. He's a salt of the earth Mainer.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And
He grew up on a farm that actually has those the granite markers that the Vikings put out.
around here,
In Bristol, I think.
Brooksville?
Bristol. Down at Bristol.
Oh,
down-
okay,
down-
yeah. I need the hearing. loop.
Downstate, you didn't need a hearing loop.
But he's a very interesting
Yep.
character.
Character is a good, curmudgeon is another word.
I remember before joining, go up to the county. He said, "Now you're members, right?" I said, "No. Where do we join?"
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
My favorite Phil story is we showed a movie, a James Bond movie, and something had happened to the print. This was back when we used 35 millimeter changeover. And something had happened to the end of the movie, so we couldn't show the end of the movie. And he stood out where he stands with a door open, and he told everybody what happened. And he thought that was fine.
yeah.
And it was the most pivotal moment because you learned that it was I can't even remember what it was, but it was some phrase that always appears in these movies, and it was the origin story of that phrase. And here's Phil
Yeah.
filling in what you missed in true Phil fashion.
So did I hear you correctly? You're thinking about maybe January?
I think it's a possibility. I would hope.
How do people keep in touch with what, do you put out an e-newsletter?
I do, and that's a lot of people don't know who I am. They just know that they get these emails, Jane at Old Film, from Jane at Old Film,
Right.
and that's me. So yeah, we do an e-newsletter. In the real time, I do it every Monday, and everybody gets it.
I don't get it every Monday.
Well, you've gotta
I must
sign
not
up.
be on the list.
I'll put you on the list. And everything that goes out, it goes to social media as well.
Yeah. Are you okay if people out here have a question or something for you? All right, we've got a roving mic somewhere. Catherine, if you can help me with that, please. This is good. I'd love to interview Phil sometime. I just know he's just chock-a-block full of stories.
I tried.
No, I'm not going there. I'm just saying that I think he would be interesting.
He's a character.
Think of a bribe or something.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember being little and having my uncle in New York City take me to the movies every weekend. And, I saw the most horrible movies that you could imagine. And, I mean, for a 5-year-old,
Like
to see,
scary, inappropriate
like
movies?
Tarantula,
Yeah.
and other, the Blob, and so, but the double features were really, really popular then. And is that sort of out of the question now? I mean, just to even have old movies that are,
They're just too
showing-
long.
excuse me?
They're just
too
generally
long?
too long at this point. There were 2 reelers, and you could fit a movie on a reel and another movie on a reel, and they did that a lot. And that's another thing that you'll notice coming out of the pandemic is what we're seeing is the movies are so long that are being released right now. Dune is 3 hours long. The new James Bond is 3 hours long because people are watching them at home and they can pause it and do something else. So that doesn't work very well for us. We can't show 2 shows in an evening that are 3 hours long. And we have to have an intermission, which is great because we'll sell more stuff at the candy counter, but then we're paying our people longer. So it's sort of a wash. I don't want to sit for 3 hours. I mean, I just don't. I'm hoping that trend goes away once people start feeling comfortable. Are you comfortable going to the movies? I mean, I want to put this out to you. Okay. Okay. She's all ready.
I don't think there's anything like the big screen.
No.
I mean, I would much rather sit in front of a great big screen than to stream at home. Any day.
I'm the same. I'm the same because I have kids and a dog, and it's always a disruption. And the thing about the movies with me is I want to be completely immersed in the movie, and have
Right.
nothing else. The movies are tough because masking is tough because everyone wants to eat, and everybody's kind of close. But if people are more comfortable.
Yeah. Someone else have a question for Linda Heyman.
Yeah, I absolutely love the Alamo, and I've traveled, 50 miles to come to the movies on a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon for the last few years, and I'm a member as well, and happy to do that. But I think you could market to my age group. You really could. We don't like to travel at night, that is true, but in this town, there are a wealth of seniors, and I think they like the movies. And also you can do dinner and a movie. That could be a thing. I'd love to go out to dinner. I don't have anybody to go with, but if a bunch of people were of like-minded and they were going to combine it with a movie, I would sign up, and I have a feeling I'm not the only one.
Well, we do that with McLeod's.
You do that?
Yes.
I did not know that.
We've done a dinner and a movie with them for years and years, and it's wildly popular. It's a huge, it really amps up for the holidays. But as far as I know with McLeod's right now, they're still limited as well. And we're having trouble with staffing, just like everybody else is. We've hired, and Phil's kind of trying to back off. I mean, Phil is, but he's also has some health, issues. So we've kind of tried to protect him a little bit from just the public
Sure.
stuff. So we hired a new projectionist who was fabulous. He learned a lot of stuff. He has kids that are under 5, and he just didn't feel comfortable dealing with the public and then going home to little, because now 5 to 11s can be vaccinated, but his kids still can't be.
Right.
So we're running into that, and our popcorn kids that wandered off because we weren't
Right.
making popcorn.
So, Linda, are you saying an afternoon matinee, or I'm not? What would it look like?
I I used to do volunteer work with the theater group in Lewiston many years ago, and it's a lot volunteer-driven. And I think there are people like me who would be very happy to do it for nothing, you know, to just get things going again. And I think seniors are very reliable, so that's a real possibility, I think. And I do like this idea of combining things. I mean, I just heard about a Christmas tea that's coming up, that's going to be held over here. I think it's a fabulous idea, and I think that would generate some enthusiasm throughout the community. I would be very happy to do whatever I can to help you as a volunteer.
Thank you.
I'd like to ditto that. I would be very interested in volunteering to be a projectionist. I mean, I'm sure you'd have to train us,
Oh, sure.
but there are people who would, I think, enjoy that.
That's really a demonstration of community
It is.
commitment, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, because some of these things cannot function without volunteers. And volunteerism is, sounds like it's perking here tonight.
Yeah.
Someone else with a question. How about, we need it, ma'am, because we're taping.
What about guest lecturers like they had, you know, people,
We just stopped doing it because of COVID. I mean,
yeah,
that architect series was scheduled for September. They pulled out because of COVID. I mean, right now, it's not about programming, it's about COVID. We have a brand new booker that we started with right before COVID hit. And he was able to book, you know, he's happy to book a month out so people actually know what's coming, which is really exciting. So it's not a programming issue, it's people weren't ready to come. They weren't ready, and then things got worse, so.
So how does a lecture series get funded? Do they charge tickets for this, or?
They do it all, it's all donated, and they rent the theater from us. As much as we can, we try to just be the venue.
Right.
It's easier on us, and it's just better. I mean, we just don't have the resources to hold everyone's hand and be the caterer and do all that stuff, but the space, we just rent the space. So they come in and we tend bar and they drink a lot of beer and talk about architecture. It's wonderful.
That's great.
It is, and they're really good. The
Yeah.
lectures are really good. Interesting.
In Worcester, Massachusetts, there was a very famous place called Mechanics Hall, and it was historic, and you had people like Mark Twain, and I don't know how many people who did lectures there over the years, but I think the lecture series would be interesting. There's a lot of interesting people that live,
Yep.
you know, around here.
And we premiere movies, and we try to get the producer, the filmmaker, you know, we try to have them come introduce it. We do a lot of stuff like that. Programming's really not the trouble at the moment.
Right. So it's staffing,
It's staffing and
And
it's
COVID related.
safety, just
right?
because we can't social distance in such a small theater.
So you're guessing maybe January. So let's say that,
As long as these trends, right now, the trends, even though it seems like we know more people that are sick, personally, I know way more people that are sick now than I did a year ago,
right,
but they're not vaccinated or whatever, so it's different, and we have more tools now.
right. So let's suppose it was January.
Yep.
Are you thinking in terms of film programming or other kinds of programming when you reopen?
I think film has to be our
Would
number
be it,
one
yeah.
priority, but we rent the theater. We're full on renting right now. They've been doing Medicare talks, and you know, we have 2 this month. They, you know, just special rentals like that. So
Really?
yeah.
Another question from people? Suzanne,
Hi.
Hi.
Can you please tell us a little more about Northeast Historic Film and the relationship with the Alamo?
Sure.
Thank you.
So Northeast Historic Film is the parent company. It's a motion picture archive. We collect and preserve the motion picture film related to northern New England. So all the TV stations in New England, I'm going to say all, but it's not all, but a lot of them, Boston, Maine particular, actual motion picture film, we house that. And that big cube in the back is a 3-story conservation vault. We have over 10 million feet of film in there. We rent the space as well. So institutions that have, say you're Harvard and you're in Boston, it costs a fortune to have that much storage space in a city. So they, places like that can store it here and climate control. Very cool and very dry. And so we have a lot of vault clients that store their film with us. We do a lot of things. If you have home movies, we transfer your home movies to something that you can watch. And we, my kid's second grade teacher just called and said, I finally want to get my home movies done. So there's that. And then we have, filmmakers that want to use our stock footage. So if anytime you're watching the History Channel or something like that and there's archival footage, it's probably ours. And that's very exciting.
that's interesting. I mean, it's not something I think is maybe clear to a lot of us that kind of opportunity exists. It really puts Bucksport sort of on the map in that
It's
area.
a very, very cool thing
Yeah.
to get. I've had amazing phone calls throughout my long career at Northeast Historic Film. It's, Oprah Winfrey's office just called, or Walter Cronkite's office had just called, or, just interesting. I love Ken Burns. I love the work he does, and he's a very, very big supporter as far as using our stuff. It's stuff you see.
Catherine?
I want to ask a couple of questions. If I have home movies,
Yep.
I have Super 8, I have regular 8, 16 millimeter video, cassette, So you're saying that you could transfer those onto a digital medium?
So you can play with it, edit it,
Okay.
share it, easy. Yeah.
By the foot, is that how you do it?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second question is, I used to work with a whole bunch of independent filmmakers way back in the South who created films and then needed a place to show their films and would come and do a tour.
Right.
And I just wondered if the Alamo had ever done that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we premiere a lot of, first-time films and yeah. Jay Craven, as a filmmaker out of Vermont, we always do his main premieres, and he always comes and talks and teaches you all about what it's like to try to make a movie and the process and the expense and the stars and yeah. So it's pretty fun.
Other questions from the... I have a whole wallet full of admission tickets that
I bet you do.
I'd love to use.
I'll keep that in mind.
So,
And I have appreciated everyone that has renewed their memberships, even though when we have very little to offer as far as the Alamo goes. But with Northeast Historic Film, during this time, we've been digitizing our hearts out and getting more and more stuff up on the internet so that members can, because before Netflix, there was our loan library. So you could borrow stuff through the mail or pick them up at the office. Videos, and now we've put more and more of them up so members can watch things online, which has been a lot of grant writing, constant grant writing during this time. I mean, it's just,
So you said that when you were hired out of the mill, you were the first full-time
yeah,
employee, so,
paid employee. The
yeah,
directors worked a very long time with no pay.
okay.
Yeah.
Paid employee.
Yep.
So do you have other full-time paid employees, or you?
Yes, everybody now is, yep. There's 7 of us, I think.
Yeah,
We always say we're the Magnificent Seven, but sometimes I think we have 6 or 8, but it's generally around 7 of us.
the Magnificent
Yes.
Seven, yeah. What do you think that you would want the community to know? You know, we have people who are going to watch this on the YouTube channel. It's on the town page under Know Your Neighbor, and you know, hopefully there'll be more people who will see this. So, what's your biggest hope for support from the community here as we kind of get to wherever we're getting to next with this stuff?
I think this community's been amazing to us
Right.
throughout everything. I mean, we got to a point when we were still doing 35 millimeter projection and we couldn't get movies. It was getting harder and harder, and we were going to have to go digital, and there was no money to do that. And my mother had just died, and I called everybody in town that had a hand in business and had a stakes in us being a movie theater or not. And everybody came together, and I didn't care. I needed to ask the question, do you as a community want a movie theater? There wasn't one person in that auditorium, and it was packed, that didn't say, we want, you know, it was unanimous. They were there, and they were going to do whatever it took to get our digital projector.
Right.
It was unbelievable. This community was so unbelievable that Stephen King paid attention, and he watched, and he saw everybody giving their pennies, everybody came forward to go to save us, and it was incredible. And then we needed the end of it, and the town kicked in, and it just, you know, and the town being the town office,
Right.
had helped us get started, because they said, we want a movie theater. And we're a great thing to sell people on. When you come into a town that has if you've got a bookstore and a movie theater and a grocery store, I mean, it all helps, right? So Roger Raymond said, we're going to give you this amount of money, and this is what you're going to do with us. You're going to give the schools a certain number of shows for free. You're going to give the town a certain number of shows for free. Well, we committed to that, and it went on a long time, and until we just couldn't afford to give it away for many more years, and so that ended. But they made it clear, we're going to give you this, but you're going to run this movie theater like a business, and we don't want you coming back to us every year. And
Right.
that was tough love, and it was good, and we didn't go back to them, and then they came through, and this town, it was a grassroots effort to get us digital, and that was amazing. And I've never looked back. I've never thought, I got to keep this movie theater going. So this has been really hard for me.
Yeah.
I put my heart and soul into this movie theater, and it's been really hard not to be open. I'm sort of.
So we really are grateful to you tonight
Thanks.
for coming and sharing so candidly and so passionately about this very important piece of cultural center in Bucksport. And we're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have Northeast Historic Film and the Alamo. And I think the one thing I've learned about this town is it's very resilient and it does come together. And I really hope that as we move forward that you'll see that kind of coming together again. And so I'd like to ask the audience to join me in thanking Jane for coming tonight. This has been the Know Your Neighbor program with our friend Jane Donnell from the Northeast Historic Film and the Alamo. And Jane, we thank you and thank the audience and those of you who are watching tonight or at a later time. Next month, on the second Tuesday, we will have the Superintendent of Schools, James Boothby, who will be my guest. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in tonight.